Hey guys, how's everyone doing? It's good to see you. Well, kind of see you, but it's good to see you. And today's talk is about liberal democracy and the threats to it continued. So, liberal democracy again, we said, is a type of state ideology that really has the four following things in common, right? It has a representative form of government as opposed to a dictatorship or a monarchy, and also as opposed to a direct democracy where the people rule. A representative system obviously means that the citizens indirectly influence their government through electing representatives who then make the laws and policies, right? The second thing a liberal democracy has is open markets, right? That term liberal just means laissez faire or open markets. And it's really just another way to say a capitalist system, right? A system based on sort of like, the right to start your own business, the right to trade your goods on an open market, the right to own land and private property, right? You guys know all that, right? So that's the second major staple of a liberal democracy. Third thing is an emphasis on individual rights and freedoms, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, protection of search and seizure laws, and so on, right? Individual freedoms. And finally, the fourth staple of a liberal democracy is equality of opportunity, meaning that we all are given an equal chance to, succeed within the liberal democracy, which is usually translated to succeeding in a capitalist system, being a good capitalist, basically, right? So that's the four kind of hallmarks of a liberal democracy. And Great Britain and the United States are kind of the two most well-known ones, as we talked about sort of last class. France, Italy, Germany, Spain, Portugal, they're all considered liberal democracies. Australia, New Zealand, all the Nordic countries, kind of get the point, right? And we also talked about in the last lecture how maybe there's contradictions. Maybe we don't always operate according to those very principles that we say we are, that make us a liberal democracy. Now, today I briefly just want to talk about how one major threat to liberal democracy, and it's come in the form of what's called populism. Have you guys ever heard that term before, populism? Populism just refers to basically a movement by which politicians tap into the anger, usually of the working class of that country. They tap into the anger and make them promises that they are an outsider and that they will fix things for them. And they use those same people who have suffered as their base to get them into power. FDR was a populist during the Great Depression. They can, by the way, be Democrats and Republicans, right? They can be anything. Roosevelt was a populist. Bernie Sanders is a populist. He taps into the anger that the working class and that middle class people feel for the rich kind of dominating all of our politics and our entire system, right? And of course, Donald Trump is a part of this wave of populism that has some anti-liberal democracy characteristics, right? So Donald Trump obviously got elected because he tapped in to the anger that many working class Americans were feeling towards declining wages, towards the crushing of their unions, towards good American jobs, leaving America in so-called free trade agreements to go to other countries. So like many corporations are just saying, the hell with American workers. I'm just going to send their jobs overseas because I don't have to pay them as much. I can pay them half as much. My workers in China or workers in Vietnam, I can pay them half as much. In Bangladesh, I don't have to deal with unions. I don't have to get them health care, all these other benefits. So many American workers are rightfully upset. And Donald Trump came in, right? He was called a populist. He came in and he said, you know what? I'm going to fix everything for you. I know why you're mad. You're mad at free trade. And Hillary Clinton and all her corruption supported free trade and led to your jobs leaving the country, right? And that's true. Hillary Clinton was about as corrupt as you can get, right? And, he made all these promises and said, I'm a man of the people. And then, he got himself what? Into power. He got elected. But what's a real problem is many of these populists, like I would argue Trump is one of these, don't really have the interests of the working class at heart, right? They are very much members of that elite. Maybe they didn't hold political office, but think about it. Somebody like Donald Trump was, a multi-billionaire, head of a monstrous real estate empire. He's not a common person. He's an elite, right? An economic elite, maybe not a political elite, but as we've talked about all semester, politics and economics just have merged together. And the top business leaders are the political leaders, and the top political leaders are the economic leaders, right? In Turkey, they had a populist get elected. Hungary has had a populist get elected into power. You could argue Boris Johnson partly is that, right, in Great Britain. So you're seeing all of these leaders that have been getting elected on the wave of tapping in to working people's rightful anger at the fact that globally, the gap between rich and poor is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, right? It's astronomical. Now, what's making all of these populists, again, Hungary's leader, Turkey's leader, the Philippines' leader, Great Britain's leader, our leader with Trump, right? What's a hallmark of all of these populist politicians, again, tapping into the root of people's anger to get elected, is the fact that they don't necessarily at all support classic liberal democratic principles. All of the people, particularly Trump, you look at him as the case point, they don't support liberal premises. For example, Trump has been very outspoken about very outspoken against the mainstream media. He calls them fake news. He calls them, he screams at them and berates the media. He says that if it was up to him, he would get in the habit of banning certain media outlets from existing in the United States. He's made statements like, I have sole control and sole authority as president of the United States. That was in reference to his response to governors saying that they have the right to decide when to end the government mandated shutdowns for the coronavirus. Donald Trump has signed record amounts of executive orders, which, obviously all presidents have done that, but it's not even constitutional. And on, right? So many of these leaders, and by the way, Trump is a light case compared to Hungary and Turkey and Philippines, which are all full-blown dictatorships now, right? Oh, you could also argue that Vladimir Putin is very much a populist in Russia, but no one really points to that because he's been in power for so long as it is, right? So what makes these populists unique really is kind of they're not committed at all to classic liberal democratic principles. In fact, you could argue they have more of an authoritarian impulse, right? People forget that actually during the last election, when Donald Trump was running against Hillary Clinton, he was asked point blank during the third debate, if you lose this election, will you accept the results of the election and cede the election to Hillary? And he said, no, I'll keep you in suspense at the time. We'll see at the time. He didn't even commit to accepting the results of a democratically held election. I am putting democratically held in quotes, right? So, that's something to just kind of think about, right? So I hope you guys are well, and we'll talk soon. Take care.